First of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Umar Ahmad. I am from Chambuk National University. So, my today's topic is the structural and optical properties of flower and needle-shaped zinc oxide nanostructures by ALD. The question arises why we use the zinc oxide. As we know that the zinc oxide is very essential material in the field of semiconductor because of its various uses in both fundamental and practical studies. Due to its wide band gap, which is about 3.37 electron volt, and its high exciting binding energy, it is a very important material for which shows the efficient laser exciting at room temperature. So its exciting binding energy is about 60 milli-electron volt, which is larger than another semiconductor materials like zinc selenide and gallium nitride, whose about 22 and 25 milli-electron volts. So it is well known that the exciting binding energy must be larger than the thermal energy at room temperature to show the efficient laser excitant at room temperature. So in this endeavor, we can say that zinc oxide have a higher exciting binding energy and a wide band gap. So it's very useful to fabricate the optoelectronic devices which is applicable on the room temperature. And it's a very good candidate for high efficient excitant billion UV diode lasers. So in this endeavor, we can say that the zinc oxide nanostructures are promising for developing functional devices and systems in the near future. Now I came to the advantages of our system. The system we employ for the fabrication of these flower-shaped and needle-shaped zinc oxide nanostructures. A variant of chemical vapor deposition. Our system is based on the sequential, complementary, self-limiting and saturated chemical reaction. So each precursor is introduced into the reactor chamber after a certain time interval. Due to these mechanisms, this sequential dosing mechanism inhibits the detrimental gas phase reaction because at every step some byproducts are formed in the on the substrate which is purged before dosing the another reactants. So due to these mechanisms, the substrate have a very less contamination or no particle contamination because of the homogeneous reaction on the substrate. And our system is best for large size vapor processing. So our objective is to grow the flower and needle-shaped zinc oxide nanostructures. The general morphology of these structures we observed using the field emission electron microscope. While the crystallinity of the deposited materials was obtained using the X-ray diffraction patterns. To know the detailed structural properties of the deposited materials, we use transmission electron microscope. And the most important thing is the optical properties of the material. So we use the photoluminescence spectra to observe the optical properties of our deposited materials. So we came on this flower-shaped zinc oxide nanostructures. This is the general morphology we observed by the FE-SIM observation. So we use the different orientations of the silicon substrate to grow these type of zinc oxide flower-shaped structures. So figure A shows the FSM image of flower-shaped zinc oxide arrays grown on silicon 100 substrate, while figure B is shown on the silicon 111 substrate. So in figure 1 we can see that these structures shows a sharpened tips while their bases are broader, and these wider bases are joined to each other and they form this type of structure. One of the most interesting thing in these structures is that these structures are formed layer by layer. Thus each layer have many leaves, and each leaves are joined by their wider bases and form this type of structures. So approximately the length of these full arrays is about 1.2 micrometer, while their one leaf is about 55 nanometer, its diameter. While in case of silicon 11 substrate, we can see that these structures also have a leaf life structures, but these structures are somewhat on their tips. They show the characteristic of zinc oxide hexagonal structures. So to know the composition of these deposited materials, we use the energy dispersive spectroscopy. So from these spectra we can see that these structures are composed of zinc and oxygen only, while we also observe silicon and carbon signatures on these spectra. So this silicon signature is because of the substrate, while the carbon signature is because of the carbon coating on the FSM grid. The crystallinity of our structures was observed using the XRD studies. So from these both spectra we can see that these both spectra shows the characteristic zinc oxide hexagonal voltage structures, which is zinc oxide 0002 peak, which is larger in intensity as compared to the other peaks like zinc oxide 1011 and zinc oxide 1010, like this here. So from these spectra we can assume that these structures are preferentially oriented in the C-axis direction and they are grown on 0002 direction. We compare the room temperature photoluminescence spectra of flower-shaped structures grown on silicon 100 substrate and silicon 11 substrate. We got almost same type of structure spectra in both the cases. We got one near band emission in the UV range, while a deep band level emission in the visible range. These both spectra are at the same point, that they are observed on 378 nanometer in both the cases, while the deep level emission is also observed on the same point, about 520 nanometer. These spectra shows that these structures have some less defects and oxygen vacancies because of the appearance of these green emissions in the visible region. So we come on the our needle shaped zinc oxide nanostructures. These figures are the zinc oxide needle shaped nanostructures. This figure A is the low magnification and the figure B is the high magnification of these structures. This we can see from figure A that these structures are very dense on the substrate, while in figure B we can see that these structures are also sharpened at their tips while their bases are wider. These structures, length of these structures is about 300 to 400 nanometer, while their diameter is about 50 to 60 nanometer. These structures are grown on the gold-coated silicon 100 substrate, while the flower-shaped structures are grown on without catalyst. So the composition of these nanostructures, zinc oxide needle-shaped nanostructures, was observed using the energy dispersive spectroscopy. So from these spectra, we can see that these structures are also composed of only zinc and oxygen, while these carbon and silicon signatures are because of the substrate and the carbon signature on the same grid. While we observe one very short peak, it is for gold. From this spectra, we can see that the gold is left as a residue after the reaction on the substrate. The crystallinity of these structures was observed using the X-ray diffraction patterns. So in this X-ray diffraction patterns, we can see that we observe the zinc oxide hexagonal voltage characteristic peak zinc oxide 0002, while another zinc oxide peak zinc oxide 1010. It means that our needle-shaped structures is grown on the both direction, but preferentially oriented in the 0002 direction. While silicon and gold peaks are also observed. This means that some gold residue is left after the reaction on the substrate, like we see in the ADS spectra of these structures. So detailed structural properties of these needle-shaped structures was done by transmission electron microscope. We done the SED pattern. From SED pattern we can observe that these structures are preferentially oriented in the C-axis direction and grown on the 0002 direction. Well, the HRTM image of this needle-shaped structure, the upper portion is shown here, while the lower portion of this needle-shaped structure is HRTM is here. From this HRTM image, we can predict that the distance between the two fringes in these zinc oxide nanostructures is about 0.52 nanometer, which is equal to the lattice constants of the zinc oxide. So the further structural characterization was also done by the TEM. From these nanoneedles, we can see that there are some scratch-like structures in the on these structures. These structures we observe using the HRTM image. So we can see that these structures are somewhat. These structures are formed somewhat because of the interstitials of zinc. And we call it as the stacking faults. We can say that these structures have some stacking faults on these on the leaves. The photoluminescence property of these nanostructures also shows that a near band edge emission in the UV region and a deep level emission in the visible region. So in this case, we also observe this UV emission at 378 nanometer, while this broadband in the visible region we observe at about 520 nanometer, which is almost similar to our previous previous zinc oxide flower shaped structures. So from these spectra we can predict, because of this deep level emission is observed because of the structural defects and the impurities in the structure. So we can say that our structure have some structural defects because we got some deep level emission in the visible region. So I want to conclude my lecture with these points, that the X-ray diffraction pattern of flower-shaped and HRTM and ACD pattern of needle-shaped zinc oxide nanostructures show single crystallinity and C-axis growth direction. In the PL spectra, a suppressed green emission with a sharp and strong UV emission for both flower and needle-shaped structures indicated that these structures have good optical properties with less structural defects. And by this research, we open a way to grow the nanostructures composed of a wide range of materials. At last, I want to say acknowledgement. The support of Brain Korea 21 for this work is gratefully acknowledged. And a hearty thankful to my advisor Professor Y. Bihan for his proper guidance, fatherly and kind cooperation in all aspects. And thanks to all my colleagues, Dr. A. Sekhar, Lee Sok, Sanghoon, Yunuk, Chiwon, Yungwon and Nason for their friendly behavior and help. Thank you very much.